All right, so we are starting from Pirkei, chapter 4, the second Mishnah, Mishnah base of Pirkei Avos. The Mishnah says, Ben Azai Omer. Ben Azai says, Haveratz mitzvah kala kivachamura. One should run for a mitzvah, a light mitzvah, just like a more stringent or heavier mitzvah. How we define what's light and what's stringent is its own question. We're not really going to address that, but it could be just in a person's eyes, what's lighter, what's heavier, or it could be based on it. Sometimes the Torah does tell us what the punishment for doing or not doing something is. So that also could impact how we compare mitzvos. But it says that when it comes to running to do one, you should run equally. Run to do a light mitzvah just like a more heavy mitzvah. Ubareach min ha'avera, and one should flee from an avera, from a transgression. And it says the reason is shemitzvah goreres mitzvah, because one mitzvah leads to another mitzvah. Va'avera goreres avera, and one sin, one avera leads to another one. And then it continues and it says sheschar mitzvah mitzvah, because the reward for a mitzvah is a mitzvah. Uschar avera avera, and the reward or the consequence of an avera is an avera. Okay, so let's try to understand what Ben Azai is teaching us here. So the first thing is this connected?
Rabbi, I just want to say this is one of my two favorite lines from Pirkei Avos.
Okay, great. Which one? The whole thing or the
whole thing?
Okay, excellent. These are words that you live by. So
I try.
Great. Okay, so the first question is this connected to the previous Mishnah that we learned last week, which talked about, who is wise and who is wealthy and who is strong. And so the Midrash Shmuel suggests that this is relating back to the teaching of Ben Zoma, who said that who is strong, one who can overcome their Ezo Gibor, who is strong, who's mighty, one who overcomes their Yetzer Hara. And we quoted a verse that said it said, I think, Tov, I don't have it in front of me, but Tov, Erech Apayim, a person who's slow to anger is better than a Gibor, and someone who's Moshel Berucho, someone who controls their spirit, who controls themselves, Milo Chedir, from somebody who conquers a city. So wow, somebody who can overcome their anger, overcome their inclination is mighty and is stronger than somebody who conquers a city. So he says somebody might read that and say, well, I'm not that strong. I can't conquer a city. So forget about that. If that's being even stronger than somebody who conquers a city, then there's no hope for me, because I can't even conquer a city, let alone conquer my inclination. So maybe that Mishnah is not really meant for me, because I have no chance of reaching that level. So along comes Ben Azai over here, lest somebody lose hope. He says, no. You have to understand that it's not so hard. It's actually very simple to overcome our inclination. And that is to be careful on how we approach something, how we start. He says the first part, the beginning, is more than half. That's the expression he uses. And so when it comes to the start, that's where we have to really focus our energies. And that's where he says, Ratz mitzvah kala, just run to do a small mitzvah, and run from even a small avera, and the rest will fall into place, because then everything will happen on its own. You start, all you gotta do really is run towards a very small mitzvah. You run to do one small mitzvah, well, that's going to lead to another mitzvah and another mitzvah and another mitzvah, and it will build up. and you run away from one small avera, then you'll be avoiding so many averas, because one avera leads to another. Just run from one, and that will keep you away from so many. So he's saying it's not actually that hard. It's not actually that hard. Just start off strong, and start your day. Let's say you could have this as a daily practice, right? How do we start our day? Do we start our day with a mitzvah and running from an avera, or not? If we start our day strong, then one thing will lead to another, and we'll have a day filled with mitzvahs. If we start our day by succumbing to a small avera, then that will build on itself, and we'll end up with a day full of transgression, God forbid. So that's all it takes, and really, it doesn't take so much. That's what Ben Azai is coming to tell us. Now, how does this work? This idea that one mitzvah leads to another. Is it a psychological thing? Is it a spiritual thing that Hashem offers as assistance? So Rabbeinu Yonah says it's both. Rabbeinu Yonah says, first of all, we become accustomed to it. It becomes our nature. It becomes routine, and that which is routine becomes easier for us to do. So one mitzvah leads to another because we become accustomed, and it becomes routine to do mitzvahs. That's on the one hand. And additionally, we also get siyata dishmaya. We get heavenly assistance because Hashem helps us in the direction that we want to go. And if we show that we want to go in the direction of mitzvahs, so Hashem helps us, and he gives us more assistance in that regard. That's what he brings from Rabbeinu Yonah. Then he adds something from the commentary Chassid Yavitz, and that is that it's not just that we do a mitzvah that leads to another mitzvah, but it's the way that we do a mitzvah that leads to another mitzvah. If a person does a mitzvah, they run to do a mitzvah. Now, running to do a mitzvah is an expression of our joy, our excitement, our good, willingness to do it. So then, when a person does something in that fashion, then they themselves become elevated, become inspired by it. It raises them up to do more. If a person makes it for themselves into an exciting experience, even if they have to kind of push themselves to do it, this is an idea really comes, well, I shouldn't say really comes. The Chassid Yavitz was before the Mesilas Yesharim, but the Mesilas Yesharim does talk about this as well, that that if we throw ourselves into mitzvah with energy, then even if we don't necessarily intellectually or feel that way, but once we start on that path, then it becomes like it will awaken us and awaken our excitement. If we do it excitedly, if we do it with zrizus, then we will develop that midah, that trait within ourselves. And that's very similar to what he's saying here, that if a person approaches a mitzvah with excitement and with joy, so that will inspire them to want to do more mitzvahs because of the awesome experience that they had. And that's why it says you should run to do even a light mitzvah, because if you run to do it like it's a great treasure, so then, and he quotes the language of King David, Sasa nochi ali marasecha, I rejoice on your words, kimotzi shalal rav, like someone who found a great treasure. So that's how we approach a mitzvah. So then that will encourage us to do more mitzvahs. That's what will help lead to doing more mitzvahs. And he quotes another pasuk from another verse from Tehillim that says, Derech mitzvosecha arutz. In the direction of your mitzvos, I will run. And it's not just the mitzvah itself that he'll do with zeal, with zrizus, but even the approach of the mitzvah, the derech, the way to the mitzvah, he does with zeal. And that opens up one's heart to do more mitzvahs. Okay. Now, when the Mishnah says sechar mitzvah, the reward of a mitzvah is a mitzvah, sechar avera avera. The reward or the consequence of avera is an avera. So the simple reading is it's a continuation of why does one mitzvah lead to another? Because you get rewarded. That when you do one mitzvah, you get rewarded with the opportunity of another mitzvah. That would definitely be the simple reading of the Mishnah. One leads to another because the reward of a mitzvah is a mitzvah. But the commentaries have other possible ways of understanding this. So, for example, he quotes from Rabbi Vadia Mibar Tanura, who says that that it's actually going back. I think what he's saying is it's actually going back on the first clause. It says run to do a mitzvah. Why should one run to do a mitzvah? Because the reward for a mitzvah is a mitzvah, meaning that not the reward, the result, but rather the feeling of reward and the joy that one has, the schar mitzvah, the great feeling, the reward that comes along, meaning the great feeling that comes along with a mitzvah, that itself is a mitzvah. So there's different aspects to a mitzvah. There's the way that there's the actual act, and then there's the way that we do the mitzvah. And the way that we do it, the joy that we have in it, that's what he's calling the schar of the mitzvah, the joy and the benefit that we have. We can maybe use that word, the benefit of the mitzvah is itself a mitzvah. That itself is a mitzvah. That's why we should run, because the energy and the passion that we do it in itself is a mitzvah. And God forbid, on the other hand, the schar avera is an avera. If we run to doing avera, the passion with which a person does an avera transgresses the Torah, that itself could be an avera that can add to the level of transgression if they do it with excitement. Okay. Furthermore, he says, another way to understand this idea that schar mitzvah, the reward for a mitzvah is a mitzvah, is again, it's a reason to run towards mitzvahs. And perhaps it also explains why one mitzvah leads to another, but not because, again, the simple reading, schar mitzvah, mitzvah. One mitzvah leads to another because the reward for a mitzvah is a mitzvah, so one leads to another. That would be the simple reading. Another way to read it is that and this is an idea really that also is discussed in the Nefesh HaChaim. Maybe we'll say it a little bit the way that he says it, but the way the Midrash Shmuel says it is that the reward for a mitzvah is the mitzvah. The reward for the mitzvah is the mitzvah. We have the mitzvah now. We've done it. And the consequence of an avera is an avera. It's not another avera or another mitzvah. It's the mitzvah. The reward for the mitzvah itself is the mitzvah, and the consequence of avera is the avera. And what does that mean? So the way that he says it is that there's no greater reward for the mitzvah than getting credit for it. And in other words, that it brings one closer to God. This brings a person closer to God and provides them with a greater reward, or greater, what he calls menucha, greater rest in the world to come. So, and there's nothing worse. There's no worse consequence for an avera than the distance, the avera, the distance that it creates between us and Hashem. And the way, just to put in the words of the Nefesh HaChaim, who really says this very similar idea, when the Nefesh HaChaim talks about this, or Chaim Volozhinger, he says, when we do a mitzvah, we become like enveloped with this light, with this spiritual light that becomes a part of us, and that's what we take to the world to come. It's that spirituality that we create, and that's what it means. The reward for a mitzvah is a mitzvah, and that's why it leads to another mitzvah. Mitzvah goreres mitzvah. One mitzvah leads to another is because when we do a mitzvah, we draw down this spiritual light that we're going to bring with us the world to come. But that also enhances us in a way that it brings us and allows us to do another mitzvah. So according to this, it's I guess really it's explaining both lines. Run to do a mitzvah because one mitzvah leads to another. But why should we run to do a mitzvah? And why does one mitzvah lead to a mitzvah? Because the reward for a mitzvah is a mitzvah, that when we do a mitzvah, we get rewarded with that mitzvah. We get that mitzvah, becomes a part of us, it changes who we are. It changes where we're going, what's going to be for us in the world to come. And so therefore, A, we should run to do it. And B, it's going to lead us to do other mitzvahs now that we've elevated ourselves and enhanced ourselves with that mitzvah. Okay, Robert, I think I talked long enough that I was able to.
You said what I was going to say.
Okay, great. I was mechavein. Okay. Another idea
I just let me add that the reason I like this Mishnah so much is I like the idea that the mitzvah itself is the reward, that you're not doing the mitzvah to get something else. You're doing the mitzvah because you want to make the mitzvah part of you.
Excellent. Beautiful. Okay, another thing that he focuses on is this idea that we say, run towards an Avera and run towards a mitzvah, and flee from an Avera. Don't get any ideas, Robert. So it's and he says that the message is that we have to look at why do we have to run after a mitzvah? Where's the mitzvah going? Right? It's why do we have to run towards it? Oh, because it might run away from us. The Yetzer Hara, our inclination is always trying to prevent us. So if we don't run after it, it actually may run away from us. And don't think also that I don't have to run away from an Avera, from a transgression. I just shouldn't run towards it, right? As long as I don't go towards it, it won't come to me, right? So the answer is, the Mishnah is telling you, no. You have to run away from it. You have to try to move. We have to do things to put distance between ourselves and any Avera, because otherwise they will come to us. And so it's specifically, we have to actively chase mitzvahs because they're not going to come to us. In fact, they're going to try to run away from us. And we have to actively run away from Averos because otherwise they will come after us. And that's how God created the system, and it tests us, and we have to keep at it. And it's even for what we might consider a light mitzvah, right? Even a light mitzvah, and although it doesn't say explicitly run from a light avera, but that's what seems to follow, as if it says run after even a light mitzvah and run away even from what seems like a light avera, a light sin, okay, fine. And okay, but why light? Why is he focusing on something even that's light? So again, the message is to run after even a light mitzvah. Every mitzvah is important. So it's saying run even for what we consider a light mitzvah, and certainly for a mitzvah that we consider to be more heavy, more serious, more significant. Now it could be though that we relate to different kinds of mitzvahs differently. So something that's maybe what we would call a mitzvah chamura, right? Run after a light mitzvah like a heavy mitzvah, something more significant. So what it's telling us is something that's harder to do, a mitzvah that's harder to do. So the Yetzer Hara doesn't need to try to trick us out of it. It's kind of its own challenge on its own. A more difficult mitzvah challenges us on its own, and we're not necessarily fighting the Yetzer Hara as much over it. It's just kind of built into the mitzvahs. It's more challenging, and therefore it's its own challenge. But something that's light and easy, we might say it's easy. I don't have to run after it. It will come to me, or I'll be able to do it easily. And what the Mishnah is telling you is that that's where the Yetzer Hara, that's where the evil inclination is going to try to get us and move it away from us. And this is definitely true. in daily practice, some of the easiest mitzvos end up being tossed by the wayside with davening and Kriya Shema, saying the Shema at the right time and with the right intent. Like, it's such an easy thing, but it ends up kind of by the people don't, again, it could be because of frequency, but some of the easiest things to do end up that we're challenged by them, while some of the more difficult ones we know they're difficult, and so we kind of gird ourselves to take them on. But some of those mitzvahs that seem easy, we don't approach them with the right level of conviction, and therefore they actually end up slipping away. So it's reminding us, no, we have to even chase after those. Otherwise, the Yetzer Hara they're so easy, he's gonna pull them away from us. Robert, you had something to add?
Yeah, I think sometimes what's easy, I mean, sometimes things are easy in some sense, but they're difficult only because we don't really want to do them. Like I'm thinking, Dan lechav zechut. It's easy to judge people favorably. All you have to do is say, okay, I'm going to try and judge them favorably. What's hard is to really want to do that. So.
Fair. Okay, yeah. On the flip side, when it comes to averos, when it comes to transgressions, so a person, what we would call an avera chamura, a very significant transgression, something that we know is very serious. So that will, in general, we'll be able to stay away from that because we know it's that they're very, very serious. So so the Yetzer Hara doesn't start there. The evil inclination doesn't start with the more serious averos. He tries to trip us up on the lighter things, and then, like we said, one leads to another, and then a person can end up with more serious transgressions on their hands. So that's why the Mishnah tells us that we got to run away from those light averos, those light transgressions, even when it doesn't seem like such a big deal. It's just a little thing, right? So first of all, every transgression of the Almighty, is a big deal. But even if we understand that there's different levels, but one thing can lead to the next, and one avera, something smaller, will end up leading towards something more serious. Okay, and just one more different way to read this Mishnah is that the Mishnah is attempting to prove that the running to do a mitzvah is part of the mitzvah. And the way that it proves that is that by saying that schar mitzvah, and in this case, he's interpreting schar mitzvah to mean not the reward for mitzvah, but the price of a mitzvah is a mitzvah. Meaning it's obvious to people. He just kind of says it like he says it's a given that if we invest our money into doing a mitzvah, then that everybody can understand that is part of the mitzvah, that adds to the mitzvah. Schar mitzvah, the money we spend on a mitzvah is a mitzvah, and the money we spend on an avera, if we put our money towards something wrong, so that also adds to the avera. So that being the case, that's the proof that we should run to do a mitzvah, because just like putting our money into a mitzvah adds to the mitzvah, so putting our energy and our passion also adds to the mitzvah. These sort of additional components of a mitzvah become part of the mitzvah. And that's the reading of the Mishnah, that you should run to do a mitzvah. Number one, because one will lead to another. And number two, because we know that the money that one spends on a mitzvah, the schar of a mitzvah is a mitzvah. The money one spends on a mitzvah is a mitzvah. So certainly or as well, our passion and our energy that goes into the mitzvah will also be part of the mitzvah. So let's just, before we go on to the next Mishnah, let's just sum up what we said about this one. So we are to run to do a light mitzvah like a heavy one, because one mitzvah leads to another. So first of all, we said that this Mishnah could be coming to tell us that don't worry, you can overcome your Yetzer Hara, even though it's like conquering a city. You just have to start off well. Once you start off well, even though with a light mitzvah, one thing will lead to another, and we'll be on the right path, and then we'll be able to overcome that Yetzer Hara, and we'll be like that Gibor, like the mighty person who conquers the city, like we talked about last week. Now, how it works? Does it work? It's both a psychological thing. It's a person becomes accustomed to mitzvos, it becomes routine, and that's how one mitzvah leads to another. And it's also the siyata dishmaya, the heavenly assistance that one gets when they show the direction that they want to go in. And especially when we do it with passion, when we do something with passion, so then with excitement, so then in ourselves we awaken a passion and an excitement. If we act in a manner that demonstrates passion, whether it's there or not, but that will awaken within us passion, and that will bring us to do other mitzvos. And we had a number of other ideas, but we also talked about how when a person does a mitzvah, we should run to a mitzvah because one mitzvah leads to another, because the reward for a mitzvah is a mitzvah, meaning the mitzvah itself changes us. It is the reward in the world to come. We get that mitzvah on our resume, but more than that, it becomes a part of us, and that it envelops us with this spiritual light of the mitzvah, and that actually assists us to do other mitzvahs now that we have elevated ourselves. Okay. Moving on to the next Mishnah. Okay, so Mishnah Gimel. So this is continuing with another teaching of Ben Azai, and it says, Hu haya omer. He used to say, Al tehi vaz lechol adam. Do not despise, do not disgrace any person. Al tehi maflig lechol davar. And here they translate maflig as do not discriminate against anything. Same type of idea. Again, we'll see there's different ways to interpret it, but here instead of a person, it means anything. She'en lecha adam she'en lo sha'a, ve'en lecha davar she'en lo makom, because there's no person who doesn't have their time, and there is no item, there's no thing that doesn't have its place. Ein davar that doesn't have its place. So again, he used to say, don't disgrace any person, and do not discriminate or insult or anything, because there's no person who doesn't have their time, and there is no thing, no item that doesn't have its place. Okay, so first of all, is this connected to the previous Mishnah? Again, this is a continuation of Ben Azai's teachings, and the Midrash Shmuel quotes from the Abarbanel, who says that actually he's proving what this is the completion and the proof of what he said before, because he just said that there's that within mitzvos there's a reward and a punishment, even though it's something that we don't detect that kind of backdrop of what's behind the scenes of the mitzvah. We know on the practical, I did this, or I helped someone. I know I helped someone. I don't know what's going on. What's the spiritual background to that act? And the Mishnah was telling us we know that it's there. We just don't know what it is. We don't know what the reward is. In other words, he's interpreting, I think, when it says that we should run to do a light mitzvah like a heavy mitzvah, another idea there, and I think there's another Mishnah that's more explicit about this, but another idea there is we don't know the reward. A light mitzvah, heavy mitzvah, all mitzvahs, we don't know the massive spiritual impact that every mitzvah has. So just like that lies in the background of a mitzvah, so then he tells you that so too, we don't know what lies behind any individual or any item in this world that a light mitzvah, heavy mitzvah, a person who seems to be a nothing versus a great person. Like we don't know. We don't know we don't know who a person really is, and what makes them tick, and what they do in private, and what they've accomplished, and what potential they have within them. We don't know. And so just as that should be our approach to mitzvahs, treating them all as something that's great and has at least great potential within it. So too, when it comes to people, when it comes to stuff, when it comes to items, all of that, we don't know what lies behind them, and there could be great potential there. And therefore, we should, there's other reasons not to disgrace people, but this is another layer to it. Don't insult, don't despise any person, because everybody has their time, everybody has their purpose, and we don't necessarily know what that is. Furthermore, he says, another way that it relates is he just said that we should run from an avera, even a small avera. So what's a small avera? So we don't know, again, what's a small avera, but there's some averas, there's some transgressions which are easy picking. What's easy picking? Saying a not nice word to somebody. It's easy. We see somebody doing, that we think is whatever, strange or unintelligent, or we just don't like them, or whatever it is, and we say a line to them or about them, so we insult them, we despise them. That's low-hanging fruit in terms of avera kala, of an easy avera to end up transgressing, and so after he tells us run from such a mitzvah, such an avera, run from such an avera, even the light ones. So he tells you that to be mevasa somebody, to disgrace somebody, to insult somebody, to embarrass somebody, that is something that we have to run from, and because one avera leads to another. And he says, we know, what's klal gadol b'Torah? What's one of the most central pillars of the Torah? Ve'ahavta l'reacha kamocha. Love your neighbor like yourself. Love your friend like yourself. So on the other side of that coin is one of the pillars is not to despise anyone, and not to insult, and not to speak badly of people. So just as we can. But it's kala, it's so easy. It's so easy to fall into that. So therefore, right after telling us to run from an avera kala, from a light avera, something that's easy to transgress, so he tells us that we should be very careful about the way that we relate to other people. And then he says, in the same breath, al tehi maflig l'chol davar. So don't discriminate against anything. What kind of anything is it speaking about? So he suggests it means a mitzvah. Right after telling us that we have to run towards even a light mitzvah. So the word maflig, again, it's hard to translate what maflig means. There's different words that it can mean, but one possible understanding is it means do not put distance. Sometimes it means like this, like it's an expression of like a lot, like sometimes we use it like to mean exaggerate or to double, or so it's an expression of a lot sometimes. It can also have to do with like disputing and like splitting, really, to split and to argue. So here he's suggesting it has to do with putting distance. Don't put distance between ourselves and any mitzvah. Rather, do it as soon as we can, and because we might say, oh, it's a light mitzvah, I'll run to do it. I'll run to do it later, right? So don't put distance between us and anything. And it's a very interesting interpretation of a verse in Tehillim that some may be familiar with in a different context. The verse says, the simple meaning of that verse is that it's like time to act against those who those who dismiss the Torah, we have to act against them. Those who Mayfair means to like to negate, or so those who negate, we have to act. Now, the more famous interpretation is the interpretation of the sages, which is that there are times, there are times where it's necessary to violate Torah. So classically, like we use this to explain why we write down oral Torah, even though we're not supposed to. We have Torah Sheba'al Peh, we have oral Torah. It's not supposed to be written down, but nowadays it's all written down. We continue to write it down, and that's because it was really for the saving of Torah. So it's time to act on behalf of God. So we negated something in the Torah for the preservation of Torah. But he has a different reading of it. He says those who say those who say there's time to do for God. In other words, I'll do it later. They end up negating the Torah, because that's this line of al tahi maflig l'chol davar. Don't express, oh, there's lots of time. Don't distance it. Don't put a distance between ourselves and any mitzvah, and say, oh, we have so much more time to do it, because that leads to not actually being done. And so it says, for these two ideas, not to disgrace anyone, it says she'ein lecha adam she'ein lo shah, because there's no person who doesn't have their time, and each person will have their time. And to the second idea, that it says don't push off a mitzvah. So it says, because ein lecha davar she'ein lo makom, there's no davar, which we said is referring to a mitzvah. There's no matter. There's no mitzvah that doesn't have a place. And he says, who knows that this is the place, this is the time. And if this time and place passes, so it might not come back. So al tahi maflig l'chol davar. Don't put a distance between us and mitzvah and say, oh, I have lots of time to do it, because the end of the Mishnah, it says, ein lecha davar she'ein lo makom. There's no mitzvah, we would be saying, that doesn't have its time and place, and this might be the time and place for it. And if we miss this opportunity, it might not come back. Another suggestion for this Mishnah, it says, do not disgrace, or don't despise any person. Or I guess right here it would mean like don't disgrace and don't discriminate against any matter. Meaning, if people warn us, our friends, our loved ones, our advisors, they say, be careful of this person. It could be dangerous. It could lead you down a bad path, or they say, be careful of this thing, or this venture, or this item, this experience. Be careful. So don't ignore them. At least be concerned for what they advise, because it could be that this person that you think is not a threat is a threat. There's no person that doesn't have their time, and it could end up that the threat could be realized, could come to fruition, and the same thing with an item or an experience, or you might think, oh, it's not a big deal, and then nothing can happen, and really something could. So and he quotes a pasuk, a verse in I guess in Mishna, in Proverbs, says from Shlomo HaMelech, Baz ledavar yechbal lo. Somebody disgraces something, they end up getting hit by it. So in other words, if we're warned by people who we trust and should trust that, be careful with something, with someone, so it's worthwhile to at least consider their advice, and alti vaz l'chol adam, don't just dismiss, like, it doesn't mean the advisory. I mean, don't dismiss the person that they're saying is a potential threat, because we should, if people that we trust and love and know are telling us to be careful, then it's worthwhile to at least be careful. Okay, I think we have time for maybe one more thought on this Mishnah. Um, okay, here's an interesting suggestion. He quotes from the way of Avos. He says, again, we said that the word maflig could mean this expression of like a lot, of plentiful. So before we used it like putting a lot of time. Don't say, I have so much time. Another understanding could be, al tehi maflig l'chol davar means don't like try to increase our material items, just davar, things. Don't try to increase things. But on the other hand, the flip side is but don't dismiss or disgrace any person. Rather, we should surround ourselves with people, with friends that we should have a lot of. We should try to have. Don't dismiss anyone. Don't try to say, okay, you're not my friend. I'm not interested in having anything to do with you. Don't. When it comes to people, we should try to have as many friends, as many connections as we can. When it comes to things, so ati maflig l'chol davar, and and it says the reason is ein l'cha davar she'ein lo makom. There's no item that has no place, meaning by place he suggests it means no limit. Everything has its limit in how much we should have. So when it comes to things, everything has its place, but he's arguing that to me, everything has its limit. But there's a point where we say, I have enough. I don't need any more. Don't try to just acquire everything and more things and more things. But when it comes to people, so don't dismiss anyone. Don't disgrace anyone. Every person has their time. Everybody has their something to offer. And a reason that we should know them, and it's worthwhile to increase our connections and our friendships. And then finally, is the last reading of the Mishnah. Really, actually, is an idea that I've discussed in other contexts, and it's nice to see it in this Mishnah. So he says that he quotes it from the Chassid Yavitz, and it's connecting back to last week's Mishnah, which said, Ezehu mechubad, who is honorable? One who honors other people. And what that means is somebody who's honorable is somebody who honors others because he recognizes the value in everyone else. And he realizes that everything is created by Hashem, every person. And this is all part of Hashem's design. And it's like, the king is looking through the window and observing all of his people. In this case, Hashem looks and observes all of his creations. And so don't disgrace another person, because every person has their time, either in this world or in the next world. They have something that it could be first of all, in this world, they have a purpose. They have a reason that Hashem wants them here. And we don't even know what's in store for people in the world to come. We might think, oh, I'm the greatest, right? My portion in the world to come is tremendous, but that person, what a low life, right? But we don't know. We don't know when we get there what tests each person went through and challenges a person had, and who's greater in the next world. We don't know. So don't insult any person or anything, because everything has its time and its purpose, and everything has its place. It was created for a reason, and therefore we shouldn't disgrace any person or anything. And this really is the context that I've discussed it before in the past, is in the Sefer HaChinuch, when he talks about the transgression not to waste, about tashchis, not to cut down a fruit tree, but which we extend to not to waste things. So he has a line there where he basically starts talking about people. He's like, don't waste anything, and that's a person who's righteous. They don't they every mustard seed is important to them. And he says something like, and they Like they want to bring that person also wants to bring people closer to Torah. And it seems like it's like so random. Like, what are you talking about? We're talking about mustard seeds. Why are you talking about bringing people closer to Torah? And the idea is actually very similar to this, that a person who understands the prohibition against wasting understands that everything has a purpose, and understands that people also have a purpose, and every person has a purpose. And to help people achieve that purpose, we have to bring them closer to Torah. That's going to help them achieve their purpose. And that's really what the Chassid Yavitz is saying for this Mishnah as well. Don't, going back to the previous Mishnah, who is honorable? One who honors others. We achieve that by understanding that everybody has something to contribute. Everybody has a purpose, and therefore, don't despise or don't disgrace any person. Every person has their moment, has their purpose. They were put here for a reason. They're one of God's creations, and so too everything has a purpose, and is part of God's plan for the world as well. Okay.
Very nice, Rabbi. Thank you for getting me all the way down to